In 1307, on Friday the 13th, soldiers across France kicked in doors before sunrise. They arrested hundreds of monks, men who had taken vows of poverty, men who owned nothing. Within 7 years, their leader was burning on a slow fire in the middle of Paris. The charges were heresy, blasphemy, worshipping a severed head. Almost none of it was true. Here's what was true. Those monks in poverty robes controlled the most powerful financial network on earth. And the king who arrested them owed them a fortune he could never repay. This is the story of the men who accidentally invented modern banking and were destroyed by the first man who realized you can erase a debt by erasing the lender. They started with 9 knights in a stable. The year is 1119. Jerusalem has just been taken by European crusaders, and pilgrims are pouring in from across Europe. The problem is the road. Bandits are hunting pilgrims along every mile of it, and the pilgrims are carrying everything they own because a journey like this takes years. 9 knights make a promise. They will guard that road. They take vows of poverty, chastity, obedience. They're given quarters on the Temple Mount, and from that address they take their name. The Knights of the Temple. The Templars. Now here's where it turns. The pilgrims keep getting robbed anyway because you cannot guard every mile of a 1,000-mile road, so the Templars solve the problem a different way. Instead of protecting the money on the journey, they remove the money from the journey. A pilgrim in London walks into a Templar house and deposits his gold. He receives a document. He travels to Jerusalem carrying no wealth at all, arrives, presents the document, and withdraws his gold. The bandits get nothing because there is nothing to take. That document is a check. In 1150, 600 years before anything we'd recognize as a bank. And the moment they built that, they had built something far bigger than they intended. Because to make it work, the Templars needed houses in every major city: London, Paris, Rome, Jerusalem. They needed standardized records, trusted agents, encrypted codes so a document couldn't be forged. They needed vaults. What they had accidentally constructed was an international financial network with branches, transfers, deposits, and credit, run by an organization that answered to no king, paid no taxes, crossed every border freely, and had its own army. The deposits piled up. Nobles heading off to war left their estates in Templar custody. Kings stored their treasuries in Templar vaults because the Paris Temple was the single most secure building in Europe. And here's the part that made them powerful beyond anything the founders imagined. The Templars noticed that not everyone withdraws at once. If 1,000 people deposit gold, maybe 50 come to collect on any given day, which means the rest of that gold is sitting still, so they lent it out, at interest. Except the church banned charging interest. So they simply built the fee into the exchange rate, or the storage cost, or the term of the loan. The rule was obeyed in letter and demolished in spirit. They financed kings, they funded wars, they ran the treasury of France for decades. The actual French royal treasury operated out of the Paris Temple. A monastic order sworn to poverty had become the most important bank in the world, and the men inside it still owned nothing personally. The organization owned everything. Then the Crusades ended. Badly. In 1291, the last Christian stronghold in the Holy Land fell, and the Templars lost their original purpose. They were still rich, still armed, still untouchable by any local law, and still holding an enormous amount of other people's money. What they no longer had was a reason to exist that anyone could point to. Enter Philip IV of France. Philip has a problem, the same problem every ambitious medieval king has. He is broke. He has fought expensive wars, debased his own coinage until riots broke out in Paris, and squeezed every lender he can find. He has borrowed heavily from the Templars, and he cannot pay them back. And in the Paris Temple, a few streets from his palace, sits a mountain of wealth guarded by an order that does not answer to him. Philip does the math that every desperate borrower eventually does. Except Philip has an army. The arrests come at dawn on October 13th, 1307. The charges are lurid enough to justify anything, and the confessions come fast because they're extracted under torture. Men admit to spitting on the cross, worshipping idols, whatever the interrogators suggest. Some later recant, and recanting is treated as relapse, and relapse means the fire. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, spends 7 years in a cell before he's burned on an island in the Seine in 1314. And the treasure, Philip seized the French holdings. But here's the detail historians keep circling back to. The legendary Templar hoard was never found in the quantity the legends promise. Much of the wealth was in land, in buildings, in loans on paper, and most of the property was transferred to a rival order rather than to the crown. Philip destroyed the lender. He did not get rich. He got out of debt. So what actually died in 1307? Not banking. The idea was already loose in the world. The Italian families, the Medici, the Bardi, the Peruzzi, picked up the model and refined it into something recognizable as modern finance. The Templars proved the machine worked. Italy industrialized it. Here's what the story leaves behind. The Templars invented a system where you hand your wealth to an institution and receive a promise. That promise only has value because you believe the institution will still exist tomorrow. Every deposit you have ever made runs on exactly that belief. The Templars had vaults, an army, papal protection, and 2 centuries of unbroken reputation. And it took one indebted king one morning to end them. The money in your account is not metal in a room. It is a promise, backed by the assumption that nobody powerful enough will decide to break it. That assumption has held for a long time. It has not always held. Follow Finance Zorix. We decode the machine.